Good morning and welcome to the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. I'm Tony Haggerty and today I'm joined by Sean Martin. Sean, how you doing?
Very good, Tony. Yourself?
Very well. And it's the morning after the night before at Easter Road. Hoodoos were shattered. Bathgate no more. Hibs hoodoo no more. League hoodoo that is. Celtic dismantling Hibs in our first half performance 3-1, Sean. I think we spoke off air and we said that you wouldn't have been surprised if Celtic had scored 5 or 6 in that first half. Second half, a wee bit more, wouldn't say uncomfortable, but I thought Celtic's game management was fine. You never ever felt that Hibs were going to get back into the game in any shape or form. And had they done so, I think Celtic might have upped it again. What's your thoughts, Sean? Decent performance and the bonus of Rangers dropping 2 points and cutting the gap at the top to 2. So a good all-round night's work for Celtic.
Definitely, aye. I think first half especially, you mentioned there, first half especially was good. Creative, good passages of play through the centre as well, which I was delighted about. I think we're going to come on to him, but Tom Rogic was a massive part of that before he went off. I thought that Hibs, all right, they did score in the first half, but I thought it was just almost utter dominance by Celtic in the first half. Creatively, could have been maybe 5. If you've been generous, potentially 6 if you're going to be going a bit further with it. But again, that comes back to, I think Celtic have done that all season in most games, missed a few chances as well as scored a few. It's just going to be part and parcel. You'd rather they were creating them and missing them than not creating them at all. So I thought the first half in particular was good. As Postecoglou said, I think he said it's the best they've played all season. You could argue one of the 6-0s maybe, but given the level of opposition was, even though they're going through a trough, even though that's the case, Hibs are better than both of the opposition. They beat 6-0. And we've just said it could have been 5 in the first half. So based on that, very good night's work. Based on what happened across the city, even better. In terms of the second half, I agree with you. I would use the phrase game management more than anything else. I think Hibs obviously had better chances in the second half. I thought we'll probably come on to him as well. Joe Hart again coming to the fore when required. But overall, I think I'd agree with you. I think if they did happen to get a second, there's always a chance, obviously, with Celtic's defence and stuff. Sometimes, despite the fact that it's league leading defence, that it might be rattled if they concede another one there. But I agree with you. I actually think Celtic would have maybe just stepped the foot in the gas a wee bit more if it was becoming a real worry.
Now, you mentioned a player there who had a wonderful 40 minutes. Tom Rogic. He was strutting about like Zidane. He had the slippers on. It's Tom Rogic of old. He rolled back the years with that display. And, we touched upon this earlier in the season. So one of the great facets of Ange's management is getting a tune out of Tom Rogic. Mm-hmm. He's compatriot. And for a guy who was allegedly heading out the exit door in the summer, Sean. But whatever he said to him, he just seems to have taken it on board. And the only downside of last night is Tom Rogic coming off after 40 minutes with a supposed hamstring injury. And we'll maybe get to know the extent of that damage today because I think he's being assessed. But what was your thoughts on Tom Rogic? Were you impressed with that?
Yes, very much so. I take it if he'd have played more than the 40 minutes, he'd have got more than a 7 in your match ratings. It's a 40-minute cameo. A 7's not bad, by the way. But
tell me anybody who was better than him when he left the field.
Yeah.
So maybe Cameron Carter-Vickers, Joe Hart. I don't know.
And those 40 minutes, but no, in those 40 minutes, he was a standout. I think I agree with you. It was rolling back to the years. I think what certainly Ange knows what he's getting because he knew him before he came to Celtic anyway. But yes, still starting Turnbull and Rogic every week, every game is probably not conducive going forward, but it works a lot of the time in the league especially. And last night was one of the times it worked particularly well. And as I say, I was really impressed that they started getting chances created through the centre, which to me they've been kind of lacking slightly lately. Mm-hmm. I thought the amount of crosses that Celtic tend to put in the last couple of months, it's been a feature of their play, but it's not always been to Celtic's benefit, I would argue. Whether that's been to the type of cross, given who's playing in the middle, or just putting in a lot of crosses but not actually being accurate with them. But I thought against Hibs at Easter Road in the first half especially, some of the play scything through the centre and Rogic was at the heart of a lot of it. I thought it was sublime to watch.
Now, people are coming in, and Jason Lee comes in and saying Rogic's absence was felt immediately. Agree with that. David Bradley, regular contributor, comes in. Tony, this always happens with Rogic. When he's playing well, gets injured. It's always a stop-start with him. I suppose he's had some problems, but he's just beginning to hit a real bit of form. And you also touched upon it there as well. Frank Brennan comes in, we'll talk about him. We scored 3, it should have been 5, and Big Joe Hart made a couple of excellent saves, and if he hadn't made them very well, it could have been 3 each, and then dropping 2 points like you know who. But then, conversely, Jason Lee comes in, once we get efficient at finishing it with much joy. So there was a lot of facets to that game. Could have scored 5 or 6 in the first half. 2 Joe Hart saves in the match. To me, the one from Joe Newell when he jabbed out the leg was a sensational save. And then the one in the second half from Jamie Murphy. That's a Joe Hart of old, isn't it? The spreading yourself big, and you saw him do that time and time again for England and Manchester City, didn't you?
I don't think that's new. I think you've seen it with Man City stuff, but even since he joined Celtic, I think there's been shades of that. I don't think this has suddenly crept up.
No.
I think since he arrived, he's made. Well, last night it was another 2 or 3, depending if you want to count the kind of clearance when he came out and took away the danger as well. Timely saves, and I always use that word timely because it always seems timely when he makes them, because you just never know what will happen if he doesn't make them. And Celtic fans, especially the last couple of years since Fraser Forster left anyway, don't necessarily have the trust that the keeper would make those saves when required. So now they've got a keeper that will. And I think maybe that's people outside the Celtic fan base now clicking on to just how important he's become to the team as well. I think, and I mean that on his own merit, by the way, rather than like what I consider quite a lazy, he's the new Scott Brown comparisons in terms of like his influence alone, because I think his display, I wrote an article on it, it was either last month or it might even have been the end of August. It would have been last month, September, saying that, he's already made several big saves and he's only added to that since, and that was another 2 again last night. And I ended that article basically by kind of saying it was unfair for anybody to just refer to him as like, oh, he's an experienced, influential character to come in, because he's actually playing well on the pitch as well. And he's like, it wasn't. I think I ended it by saying he's not Celtic's new Scott Brown. He's Celtic's first Joe Hart, that kind of thing, to give him the place that he's earned already.
To be fair, he's an excellent goalkeeper, and he has come in and he's bought what Andrew's selling, and he's shown that he's actually. To me, Joe Hart looks like a player who's fallen in love with the game again.
I think that's spot on.
After a wee bit of time when people were doubting him and doubting his credentials, and he's came in and he's put his arm around him and told him, "You're going to be a big player for my football team." And he's realised, I'm playing in front of 60,000. I think he touched upon it himself when he said, even when they lost at Livingston, Celtic had like 4 stands of the ground, and he said he couldn't believe it. So I just think he's fallen in love with football again, and it's bringing the best out in him. And I always thought he was a top-class goalkeeper anyway, so it's been a real kind of marriage of the two. I think Celtic have got Joe Hart at a brilliant time, and Joe Hart has signed for Celtic at a brilliant time.
I agree with you. I think he said it as much when he joined. I mean, the gesture of, if you call it a gesture, taking less wages than what he probably could have got elsewhere. He essentially said himself it was to come to a club where they were going to be winning, where he was going to be playing, and he would feel valued, because I think for a few years there, he wasn't really valued much. His confidence was low. He was back up down into a couple of Premier League teams. His reputation had taken a bit of a hit. So I think as much as anything else, he was wanting to come up and play and just get back to what you said there, the love of the game. And he's obviously come in with the right attitude, not just because he's an experienced keeper who is influential off the field, because he was like that when he was at his peak as well. But his own confidence and his own mental health. He said it himself, just to get that love of the game back, and it looks like he's got it. And right away, you could see that he was thriving, having the opportunity to play in front of so many fans again and play for a big team that's winning again every week, rather than just sitting. Like, you know what it's like for your backup keeper. You've got to have a certain attitude to thrive in that role. And after so many years being number one for both club and country, it must have been a culture shock for him not to be.
Mm.
And I think you're seeing him thrive again now that he's back playing first team football and for a club that's winning.
And the great thing about it is that transmits to other players. That attitude, that application, that work rate. He's got it in abundance. And again, even to use the word experience, he has all that, and he can call upon that, but he can also pass up that wisdom and knowledge onto others. And I'm particularly thinking of somebody like Anthony Ralston in front of him. Listening to him and talking him through things. And Anthony Ralston took that goal last night like a centre forward.
Aye, he did that a couple of times this season.
What a wonderful
unfortunately, it was only
goal,
the second best diving header last night. But no, I agree with you, and I think again it's not to focus too much on his influence and stuff, but see that experience that he's got, Joe Hart. I think, as I said, there was a period there where you just didn't trust the keeper to make the save.
Yeah.
And you didn't, more than anything else, you didn't trust him to bounce back from a mistake either. And I'm not saying that Joe Hart won't make mistakes, because he's already made a couple in his spell here. But the important thing, and I mentioned it in that article, was he didn't let it undermine his performance. Even when he made a mistake that actually led to a goal, he followed it up with another couple of big saves later on in that same game. I don't think you could have said that about the other couple of keepers on the books.
No.
And I think that's the main difference.
Bit of a Joe Hart love in here, Sean. Spot on, Tony. He loves it here and he loves the game again. From Anthony Patrick Allen, regular contributor. Kookaburra, Hart's all in. Seems to understand what it means to play for Celtic. David Bradley, Celtic make good players, great players. And Frank Brennan, not only has he fallen in love with football again, Big Joe Hart fell in love with Celtic Football Club in the instant he walked up the Celtic way, and we all love him for it. Sean coming in as well. Sean Campbell, Big Joe's been outstanding for us. I think it's clear to see that everybody loves Joe Hart, and David Bradley comes in again and says Hart needed out of England and it's our gain. I can only agree with all of that. I think it's, as I said, I think Celtic have got him at a brilliant time in his career, and Hart's got Celtic at a brilliant time, so all good. Kyogo, another goal, 10 and something like 18. He's just always in the right place at the right time, isn't he, Sean?
Yep. We debated on air and off air whether it would be Kyogo through the middle or Giakoumakis through the middle. I think both of our preferences is Kyogo through the middle, but again, I said the other day when he moved through the middle against St Johnstone, it did cause just carnage. Winning that penalty, getting two players booked in the same run and stuff, and so I was happy to see him through the middle again. Not that that's any slight on Giakoumakis, because I thought he'd done well enough against St Johnstone, took his goal well. But I think ideally Kyogo would be through the middle. It did cause more havoc again. Hibs surprised me by going 4 at the back instead of 3. But regardless, Kyogo still caused havoc. And as I say, that the central areas, the way that they went through the central areas, is in no small part due to his movement off the ball as much as the passes that go through to him. I'm sure, I mean, you mentioned in your match ratings about Mikey Johnston's attempted cutback. I personally, as much as it was a poor cutback, I still think Kyogo could have reached it if he stretched a wee bit, if he dived in a wee bit. But it was a poor pass.
But you contrast with Jota's pass. Minutes later, it's the same ball. To me, you're squaring it for a man to have a tap in. He could have had a hat trick because he blasts that one off the keeper's leg, Matt Macy's leg. When he should have got in. Sean, we spoke about this from day one when he came in about the coolness, the calmness, and the composure. Celtic didn't live to rue those chances, thankfully. But there is an element of Kyogo, and I love him to bits, but sometimes he just needs to relax a bit more, and because he gets in those positions, but sometimes he just misses. I mean, I think most Celtic supporters would have been up off their seats celebrating, and he cannoned it off Matt Macy's leg, and wondering how he missed. So there might be days when they'll need to go. I.e., you need to be a wee bit more clinical. That's all. So.
No, definitely. I think, as you say, we have spoken about it since he arrived, that it's going to be one of those where he regularly maybe misses a sitter, but he's at least getting in the positions to miss it, and he consistently gets in the positions. He doesn't go and hide after it. Contrast that with, for instance, what I would say was exactly that when Albion Ayeti missed against Dundee United. You barely saw him again the rest of the game. Might be unfair, but that was the way I perceived it. I don't think if Kyogo misses that sitter, I think he's right back in the same position again 2 minutes later, trying to get another chance. And I think that's the kind of the lovable aspect of him. We will consistently make the runs. He'll consistently go and try and take the chances. And if he misses it, he'll just be back again 2 minutes later.
I've just been chided on air. Tony Big Man, it's Anthony Patrick Aitken. Your eyesight's like John Beaton's last night. I don't know what I called him. So Anthony Patrick Aitken, I'm very sorry about that. Whatever I called you clearly was wrong. Public apology for that. Yes. Now, Sean, Saturday you mentioned it off air. Celtic could go top of the table if they beat Livingston, which would force Rangers to get something against Motherwell. Did you say Motherwell? No, Motherwell.
Aye, Motherwell.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so, yes, and Celtic's goal difference is vastly superior to Rangers as well. So, even a point, if Rangers took a point, Celtic would still top the table come Sunday. So Rangers would need to win to go back to the top of the table. So nice position to be in, John.
It is. I mean, to quote Ange Postecoglou, obviously you're on your own race and stuff, and it is very early. But regardless, given the kind of the 3 defeats quite early in the season, to be now at the first round of fixtures and to be so close basically is a boon. I think it's now massive on Saturday in the sense that it would ramp up pressure on Rangers, and it would also be good to see Celtic's name atop the table for their confidence as much as anything else. It's obviously Livingston at Parkhead. We'll preview that game in depth tomorrow, but it's Livingston. It's at Parkhead though, not Almondvale, which makes a big difference, I suppose. But you could say it provides a wee bit of a chance for revenge after that early season loss. I mean, I don't know what you think. I would surmise that that's not what Postecoglou will be thinking on. He'll not be thinking in those terms because he's very much a guy who wants to see the players do what they do, no matter the opposition, no matter what the opposition have done in the last few weeks. He obviously, we've spoken about it before, trusts that the plan will work at some stage. Having options from the bench obviously has made a massive difference to that in the last few games. But nonetheless, I would hope to see the type of response that the players gave, for instance, against Hearts when they played them the second time round after losing the first game. Flying out the blocks, and I know it was 3-2 in the end, but in reality that game could have been 6-2. Again, one of those games. So I would be hoping to see one of those. And at Parkhead, it's certainly conceivable.
I think you'll recall, Sean, I wrote a column saying it was revenge after Hearts beat them, so I was making up words. And I feel there'll be an element of revenge on Saturday, but as you say, it won't be in the manager's plans. He'll just want to win the football match first and foremost, and do what they've been doing. And David Bradley saying this again, Tony and Sean, it's going lovely. Yeah, I mentioned on the other podcast that I do that it was all ticking along very nicely, and I think that's what you can say at the minute. Because that was meant to be a black October for Celtic. People were saying it's a black October and couldn't see where the 3 away wins were coming from, and there was talk of Ange being under severe pressure because of the fact that they couldn't see Celtic winning any of those away games. And I mentioned today in the colour piece they've gone to Pittodrie and won ugly. They've been controlled and measured at Fir Park against Motherwell, and they've given Hibs a bit of a hell of a beating, certainly in the first half, and their game management after that to me was first class. So, 3 different approaches to football matches, but 3 wins, 3 crucial wins, which has now put them in Rangers' slipstream.
I mean, I would slightly disagree that it's been 3 different approaches. I still think he's approaching it the same way. It's just that, to me, and I wrote about this when the kind of when the toys were dangerously close to getting out the pram for a lot of people over the kind of commitment to the system and stuff. I think it was more the fact that he had very little options to come off the bench and reinvigorate the plan when it wasn't working, rather than changing the whole thing entirely. But what I do agree with you is that, again, that phrase game management, when they are further ahead, there's more of an element streetwise, if you want to put it that way, where whether it's against Ferencvaros, where Giakoumakis comes on and all right, going longer isn't necessarily more of a negative way, because if you're going long to someone who is actually available and can take it in and can continue to build the play that way, then you're still keeping the ball. It's not lumping it for the sake of lumping it, because if you lump it, it's going to come right back to you. That much is a given. So I think rather than a different approach, I agree with you. I think it's a game management that's changed. I think there's less of a feeling of we're going to be absolutely rattled here if they score one. That more than anything else.
Well, I think maybe not so much the approach in terms of style and philosophy. I mean, 3 different ways of winning a football match. Mm-hmm. That's what I mean. There's, Celtic have won those 3 away games differently.
Aye.
Yeah, well, I mean, and they show that they can mix it. There's real confidence and momentum building, Sean. I think you'd have to say around the Celtic dressing room just now.
Definitely, and I think, going to put up a comment from Frank Brennan again there. We've been most of this all season. I think everybody has. If Celtic score early, all bets are off as to how many they could get if they're on form, because, as Frank's pointing out there, most of the time, if the first, say, 15-20 minutes pass and there's no Celtic goal, you're just going to get progressively, the opponents will get progressively deeper trying to get that point. A lot of the time, not every opponent, but most opponents domestically, that's what they'll do. An early Celtic goal changes everything. They need to try and get something from the game. And a lot of the time, that could mean that Celtic end up taking a good few off them, if they take their chances, of course.
Well, that away form that they showed this month, and I'll whisper this quietly, Sean, it's the hallmark of champions. I'll say that, but not getting carried away, but that's what you have to do if you're going to go and win titles. So on that note, Celtic could top the table by Saturday, close of play, and force Rangers to get something against Motherwell. It's a cheering thought for Ange and the players and the Celtic supporters. And remember, if you're watching us on YouTube, remember to hit the subscribe button. And you can subscribe to the Celtic Way for £1 a month for the first 2 months and support top quality journalism for covering the club that you all love. Thanks very much for joining me, Sean. Appreciate your contribution.
Cheers, Tony.
And thanks for watching, troops. All the best.